As the Indianapolis Colts prepare for mandatory minicamp, all eyes will be on Anthony Richardson and his progress. So, what's the latest on QB1? And what do the Colts have in store for AR this season? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined here by my colleague and fellow analyst at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, we really haven't talked about Anthony Richardson in quite some time. I mean, we've talked about him here and there, but we haven't really done an update on the Indianapolis Colts quarterback. We've been really enamored with draft stuff, but now that the draft is behind us, the Colts are in phase 2 of their offseason program, and we're seeing more and more clips released by the Colts of Anthony Richardson out there throwing to his teammates. And once we get to mandatory minicamp here in about a month or so, all eyes are going to be on number 5, his progress and how he looks as the Colts get ready to break for the summer.
Yeah, and it's a quarterback-driven league, as we've said. But when you look at this team, the coach was really brought in for Richardson, and Richardson was really brought in for Steichen. So you're looking at that, then you're looking at the entire offense is just so much more explosive and dynamic and unpredictable when he's under center. And then you're thinking about the rest of that offense around him. They're going to be amplified. They're going to have way more opportunities with a guy like him under center. And, I do like the fact that they replaced Gardner Minshew with a guy like Joe Flacco. But, hey, man, you don't want to see Joe Flacco out there at all. Okay, you don't want any Joe Flacco. You want to see old man Flacco holding that clipboard. So I think that Anthony Richardson has got a lot to do in year 2. He's got a lot of expectations, even though he only played a couple games. And I'm excited to see him recovering, and I'm excited to talk about him for once. I feel like you said, since the NFL draft has took up so much of the first part of the year, I feel like we haven't talked AR in like an entire 6-7 month period, man.
We did talk about him to end the season, when we last heard him publicly speak. But
Right.
Other than that, it's been little reports here and there. So we're really going to dive into the progress that Anthony Richardson has made this spring, the things that we're both hearing out of the Indianapolis Colts facility of how he looks, what teammates and coaches are saying about him, and then kind of give a little behind the scenes or a little preview of what we think the Colts have in store for Anthony Richardson this season. Shout out to Truitt getting us off to a hot start as always with the $5 super chat. Truitt, thank you so much, brother, for all of your support. Truitt says, hello, Dawn and I have been to the last 3 preseason games. Hope we may get to a regular season game this year to see AR flex over the AFC South. Well, hey, Truitt, hopefully you can get to see Anthony Richardson in a regular season game. And thanks again for all of your support. Really means the world to us here. Stats Matt in the house as well. Good to see you, brother. Sean Contwright it says we're getting closer here to mandatory minicamp to see these guys back on the field, which is a good sign. Chaz in the chat, what's good, Colts fam? And then of course, and then we have Hustle Man Jones, Gold Colts baby. So as more and more people trickle in here to the chat as we talk about Anthony Richardson tonight, make sure you go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever we go live every Monday and Thursday night, or for special breaking news episodes so you never miss us. And then if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, no worries. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. And shout out to my beautiful, very, very pregnant wife, Danielle, for the super sticker. Guys, it might be this weekend. This just a heads up, this may be my last episode on the Horseshoe Huddle podcast for a couple of weeks because I am going on leave. I can't live up to what Drake did, him and his fiance having a baby and immediately coming back on the show. I'm taking a couple weeks to learn how to be a dad here. All right. So it very well could be this weekend. So, but hey, while I'm gone, Drake's going to be here. You're going to see another host of the show filling in for me. Drake's going to be the host, but you're going to see another analyst at Horseshoe Huddle filling in for us. So the podcast is going to be in good hands, so make sure you continue to watch, and I'll be back in a couple weeks whenever baby Moore does decide to come here. And hey, Hustle Man Jones, thanks a lot, appreciate it. Zen Edwards getting all the love from the chat, except for Stats Matt, who can go jump off a roof or something. But
that's right.
We love you, Stats Matt. So Drake, let's talk about it. Anthony Richardson, let's give an update. Colts quarterback, he's impressing this spring. Definitely impressing teammates, coaches, really the organization is really seeing the benefits of the hard work that Anthony Richardson has put in, the dedication to his rehab. And then let's start with that injury update. So Drake, again, the things look good. There hasn't been any setbacks to that shoulder. Anthony Richardson himself feels like he is full go. He feels like he does not have any restrictions. He has full range of motion and movement in that shoulder. And Jeremy Fowler on ESPN reported this, I think it was last week even, that really the Colts are getting closer to that point as well of taking the reins off of him. During these first couple of phases of the offseason program, obviously the Colts don't play a game for months, obviously, so there is no reason to push Anthony Richardson harder than he absolutely needs to go. But they're being very deliberate with this process, gradually ramping up his workload, allowing him to throw the ball more and more each day, just monitoring the soreness, monitoring if there are and as anything that comes up. But so far, from everything that I heard, there's been none of that. There's been no setbacks. There has been no soreness in that shoulder as well. Anthony Richardson, from what I've heard, doesn't seem like that, like he had surgery on his shoulder just a few months ago. And for the Indianapolis Colts and Anthony Richardson, that is just fantastic news.
Yeah, and it sounds like the surgery so far, knock on wood, of course, it's lived up to, if not exceeded, the expectations that it had. Okay, and that was to repair, but also prevent and strengthen. Okay, so there's a lot going on with what he got done to his shoulder. Now, from everything you've seen, from everything we've heard, from everything we've wrote about, there's not one negative. Now, either the Colts are really, I mean, they're good at keeping things tight-lipped, right? But like, either they're keeping something completely under wraps, which they're not, they're more than likely not. I mean, he looks great. Everything you've seen, he looks great. He's throwing the ball just fine. His range of motion's fine. And when you went back and looked at, just briefly watched his end of the season presser, and you heard just how much it really kind of made him get a little down on himself when he realized he was out for the year. It's really nice to see his, recovery happen so quickly, on time, I guess in unison with the Colts plans and the medical team and everything. They're not pushing him too far. He's not doing too much, too little. He's right on pace. And yet he's getting fast tracked because things are working out better than you could have possibly expected. It's his throwing shoulder. You got to treat that stuff with care. And it seems like he's really exceeding expectations, but not outside of what the Colts want. Because remember, Chris Ballard said, they had to dial back Anthony Richardson because he was so raring to go that they had to remember, hey, this happened with Andrew Luck. It's not going to happen with Anthony Richardson. We're going to take care of this guy.
And another thing for fans to kind of keep in mind, think about when Andrew Luck was going through all those injuries, and when he was coming back, or even in 2019 when he was dealing with a little bit of that calf injury. The Colts social media team while the Colts social media team isn't the ones that decide they don't have any impact with what's going on the field. But when you're talking about like the stuff that they're putting out videos of Anthony Richardson throwing the football, in order to do that, those do have to be signed off of from guys on the football side of things, from,
Good
to
point.
make sure the Chris Ballards, the Shane Steichens are okay with that being put out there. So, if the Colts social media team is putting videos and showing, progress from Anthony Richardson out there, that's being okayed on the football side of things, which ultimately means it's a really, really good sign. So you always want to keep that in mind when you're starting to see these videos, or maybe you think, why haven't we seen this player in a really long time? Because you think about it, Colts social media team during the Jonathan Taylor saga, they didn't post anything about Jonathan Taylor. So you can kind of tell by if you're wondering certain things like, how's Anthony Richardson doing, the Colts wouldn't be posting things and putting stuff out there publicly about him if things were trending in the wrong direction. So that's another good positive sign. But as we get closer to mandatory minicamp here, and as Shane Steichen has kind of reiterated with his comments this offseason, it sounds like Richardson will be a full go when the Colts begin mandatory minicamp here towards the end of May, beginning of June. So very, very good sign for the Indianapolis Colts. So now when we talk about, how he's looked during these spring practices, and obviously you can, when now this kind of is the opposite of what you're thinking about when my comments of the Colts social media team, just because they put a clip out of a completed pass, that really doesn't mean anything. But again, from what I've heard from inside the building, is he's just, Anthony Richardson on the field is doing a good job. He looks like himself physically. There's no limitations. He doesn't look like he's had any setbacks mechanically with his accuracy or anything like that. He's also, had a better command of the huddle as these guys do run through some drills. They're not full contact, obviously, or not even helmets and shells, but they are doing different positional drills, different field work, and it seems like Richardson has kind of taken on a bigger leadership role for this team too. He's no longer a rookie. This is a second year guy. He's been with this team for a year now, and he's been able to take on a bigger leadership role from the team. And it's not just a couple guys saying this. When you hear the Colts talk, whether it's coaches, players, which we'll talk about here in a second, all of them point to, Anthony Richardson growing as a person, growing as a leader for this football team. So his presence out there on the field during these early spring practices has definitely been noticeable. So Drake, when you kind of look at that and what he's doing on the field, his ability as a leader, again, that it just seems like he's maturing into his own. And then this team, well, I think it was his team last year. It wasn't fully his team because he's a rookie. He's still trying to learn the ropes, but he's got a year in the NFL under his belt. Regardless if he played a lot or not, he knows the NFL game now. So he just feels more comfortable, and it feels like he's really settled in as a starting quarterback in the NFL at this point. And I think it's only going to continue to grow from there throughout the entire season.
Yeah, and in that limited sample size that you had a chance to see, you saw a guy that was prepared. Look, man, because it was only 4 games. All right, the Los Angeles Rams game drastically drops his completion percentage. I think he had like 11 for 26 in that game, and still orchestrated a comeback and got the game to overtime, I believe, or like right at I can't remember now, it's so long ago, but like either right at the end of the fourth quarter or not. Regardless, Anthony Richardson looked more prepared, more ready for that than we even thought, man. I remember we were talking after probably his 3rd game, after that Rams game especially, we were like, this guy's farther along than I think anybody could have realistically planned for. The guy was 20 years old when he was drafted. Okay, that's insane, man. He turns 22 in 13 days. Okay, I mean, this guy is so freaking young, but a lot is being expected of him now. Okay, like you said, it's really his offense, especially with the AD Mitchell acquisition, man. That is all. This is for Anthony Richardson, MPJ, Jelani Woods, Jonathan Taylor, all those weapons, man, they are for Anthony Richardson. So, yeah, I think that he's looked about as good as you can. And again, he's following the game plan of the doctors and the medical experts and the medical team, which again, you've got history on your side. It's the small silver lining of everything that happened with Luck. You know what not to do. And what not to do is to push this guy any farther than he needs to be. Like you said, you've got months before that game. Just let him recover, let him follow the game plan. And so far, it looks pretty damn good. We haven't heard anything bad.
No, we haven't. And I think, I mean, they are being smart about this, and they're the ones that are having to really rein Richardson in, which is fine. That's, as a team, that's kind of your job. You don't want the player to not be pushing the envelope a little bit, because then it might seem like, is he a little bit scared to get back there, or kind of question his desire a little bit. No, Anthony Richardson wants to be out there in full go as quickly as possible. That's why he put in the hard work through the months of rehab to get back as quickly as possible. That was been the motivation this entire time, is to get back as quickly as possible, get back with his team. So, and the players have really noticed that, because when you hear from the Colts that have, spoken at times throughout the spring here, they've seen that fire. They've seen that Anthony Richardson has gone all in on being the quarterback of this team. And really, I've got a quote here from Quentin Nelson that really has stood out to me. Quentin Nelson was asked last week about Anthony Richardson, what he sees in Anthony Richardson, and Nelson said, and I quote, "He's everything you want in a quarterback. Seeing him work around the building and working in silence, and then going out there and being a leader. He's been very on the details, and he's looking good." And if you know Quentin Nelson, and if you've seen Quentin Nelson's media sessions, Quentin Nelson, maybe more than any other Colts player on the roster, just he doesn't like talking to the media, not because he doesn't like the medium itself, but he just doesn't want the spotlight on him. Quentin Nelson's all about football, and Quentin Nelson's always also very, very honest in his comments. So he doesn't like to beat around the bush. He doesn't like to prop anybody up if they're not actually producing. If they're not, he will just kind of dodge the question. But no, he's really talking about, he sees Anthony Richardson. He works his butt off. He doesn't necessarily need the attention that some others might want as a quarterback. He's there to play football. He's there to be the best quarterback that he can be. And he says, you can see it in the details, and he's just going out there and being a leader. So I think that really, really stood out to me. Drake, what are some of the other things that maybe you've heard from the various players this spring about Anthony Richardson and just his development, how he is, or how he's been, or what changes he's made from his rookie year to his second year, or just his development in general? What has there been anything that's really stood out to you from those Colts players about the development of Richardson?
Well, first and foremost, it's just the excitement in the players' voice, their tone, their stature, how they look. I remember going back to the 2022 season. You were talking about when week 18 hit and they lost against Houston. Guys were slouching. The locker room wasn't even a good place to be. It's totally different at this point. Okay, so in just a couple of years, they've been able to flip this whole culture, and a lot of it has been Steichen and JBC and all those other guys. But it's also been because of Anthony Richardson, okay? And I think that he's showing that he's a true leader. Guys like Josh Downs thinks that he said AR is excited. I think we're going to be explosive, and that's something that, I mean, how many times, Andrew, have we said the damn word explosive on this podcast? I mean, it has just been over and over. That's because that's what Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen wanted. And then Josh Downs also said he's excited to be here. I'm really seeing him grow and mature. Getting closer to him each and every day. Everybody is. I see a real competitor and a real gamer. I mean, you remember those two when they first got drafted, they were throwing the ball to each other immediately as soon as they had an opportunity to start building that rapport at the ground level and not stop. And it's worked. And now you're looking a year later, and it's far higher up than it was when they got drafted. And then, of course, another one that was really interesting for the players. Anyway, I know coaches or something else we're going to cover, but Kenny Moore said, obviously, energy that really wasn't there last year. He wasn't in the building. So, referring to the fact that it's totally different with Anthony Richardson now, and there's a huge hope. There's an upbeat nature. Year 2, it was only 4 games played, ridiculous, luck with the injuries. but there's a lot that he's learned, and that's huge. And that's really freaking slide. I guarantee you, when that dude slides during the regular season, you're going to hear the crowd not only cheer, but you're going to hear some claps in Lucas Oil Stadium. I guarantee it.
Well,
So,
I think something that's interesting, and it probably hasn't been brought up enough, is that connection between Anthony Richardson and Josh Downs.
yeah.
We've talked. I think we've heard a lot about Anthony Richardson hooking back up with Michael Pittman, his number one wide receiver, obviously for good reason. And then we talk about his shiny new toy, his new teammate in Adonai Mitchell, Jelani Woods returning, and how he could possibly use the tight ends. But we really haven't talked about Josh Downs much. We've mentioned his name, but we haven't really dived into the Anthony Richardson Josh Downs connection. And if you remember, like you mentioned, Drake, they connected really early at rookie minicamp. And from there, the relationship started to grow. And really throughout that first month of the season, when Richardson was out there, that was some of the most productive games Josh Downs had, was those throws. Especially, I remember in the Titans game when the Colts got off to a really good start, and Anthony Richardson was just dicing up the Titans defense to Josh Downs. And then obviously Richardson gets hurt later in that game, and the rest is history. But, Josh Downs, I think he's going to take a next step. Yeah, I think he's going to improve on a rookie season where he's caught 78 catches, had 700 and some yards and 2 touchdowns. Josh Downs will take another step in the NFL. Josh Downs himself has even mentioned, focusing on the finer things, the more details. He felt like he left some plays out there. He's no longer dealing with that knee injury. So having Josh Downs with Anthony Richardson too, I think that could be a deadly connection. Those quick win opportunities there that Josh Downs can provide in the slot, so that way Richardson can get the ball out quicker. He doesn't have to hold on to it for days, doesn't have to risk taking unnecessary hits. Get it to Josh Downs and let him go. So I think that's a connection that we haven't really talked about. Really, nobody that covers the Colts has really talked about enough this offseason, in my opinion. So, Josh Downs could be a sneaky guy to watch for a much bigger jump in year 2 than a lot of people imagine.
Yeah, man. And now you're talking about he gets AD Mitchell. And I know that AD Mitchell's it's the recency stuff, man. Everyone's excited to see AD Mitchell on the Colts, okay, us included. But do not forget that Josh Downs, without him, okay, and pretty much just him and Michael Pittman, also no Jelani Woods, also Zach Moss most of the time, at least for the first part of that season, the first half. And he went out there and still got 68 catches off of 98 targets, second on the team in catches and yards. Downs is that's going to be a dangerous man. That's another guy. Him and AD Mitchell together on an offense, the way they catch the ball and how efficient they are with their hands, look the hell out, man. That's about as efficient as you can get. So.
And then another thing that has really stood out to me, is throughout this entire offseason, really, not just recently, and I think we've talked about this on the show previously, but it does bear mentioning again, is the excitement that Shane Steichen has for Anthony Richardson. And you could just see, when Steichen is talking about various things, whether it's X's and O's or whether it's certain players, certain topics, he's all ball. And Steichen will give you at times some coaching answers, and he likes to say how fired up he is about everything. But when you start asking, when he was asked about Anthony Richardson this spring, there was just something completely different. It was like a switch flipped, and you could just tell the excitement in his voice. He started talking a little bit faster. His voice went up a couple of octaves. He started talking really with his hands. The excitement that Shane Steichen has for Anthony Richardson in this offense is immense. Being able to, because early on last year, I really think it was, we know the type of player that he can be, but we're not sure where he is at now. We have to wait till we actually get our hands on this kid and be around him to see, how can he play against NFL defenses and how he's like in that locker room and in that quarterback room. Now Shane Steichen has seen that for a year now. He knows what Anthony Richardson's all about. He knows his work ethic. He knows what makes him tick. And that just makes him so much more excited because of the type of person he is, and the type of grinder he is in the facility for what he can become as a player on the field. And I think we've even showed some of his comments from especially the NFL owners meeting, of Shane Steichen. I wrote a piece on it of how excited Shane Steichen was for what Anthony Richardson's going to bring to this team. And here's another good quote. He should be good to go, talking about if Richardson will be good to go for practices or not, and kind of what their plans are. But he said he should be good to go for practices. He will be out there throwing, but we'll obviously monitor it, make sure we're smart with it. And then he's in a really good place. And I think that matters, Drake. I think that really matters a lot, because in a good place, I think, can mean a variety of different things. He's in a good place mentally. He's not worried about injuring the shoulder. He's not trying to overdo it to feel like he's lost time or anything. I feel like he's in a really good place mentally as far as understanding the offense and understanding what the Colts are trying to accomplish schematically. And then I think he's in a really good place with his mechanics as well, because just in the few clips that I've seen, I understand people want to see him throw at 65, 70 yards to say, like, the howitzer is back. But to me, I want to see his mechanics. I want to see his footwork in those drops and see, because he hasn't been able to throw and he hasn't been able to really do any of those things. Has he regressed in those areas? And in my opinion, from just the few times that I've been able to see him throw since he's recovered from the shoulder surgery, he really hasn't regressed in his mechanics. He still has a solid foundation, a solid base. The footwork still looks good. Now, can he continue to do it on a consistent basis? Well, will ultimately determine, how well he performs this season as a passer. But everything that I've seen, it all looks like it lines up really good. He hasn't, regressed in that area. And I think that is just so huge, because you're not getting those live reps. So there's a chance that you could regress and fall into some old habits. And really, it doesn't seem like Anthony Richardson has done that, which is great news to hear.
Yeah, if anything, you just want to continue to improve, regardless of if
Right.
it's slow or immense. You just want to keep moving forward. And Shane Steichen is an accountability coach. He's a coach that's all about results, man. And that's what this league is about. All right, it's not about coddling and lovey dovey and hugging. It's legitimately got to be hard on these guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's a millionaire league. You got to earn this kind of thing, and it's actually pretty interesting. There was a tweet or a post on X from Dan Orlovsky that was really amazing. And I suggest a lot of people go check it out, since the draft just happened and AR is still almost a rookie, even though he's going into year 2. The amount of information that rookie quarterbacks are expected to digest is insane. I mean, it is insanity. Okay. And he literally has a book and just flips through the pages. It looks like a Bible. Okay. So AR looked fantastic in his rookie season after digesting that kind of playbook when he wasn't supposed to be ready. Okay. Now you're giving him another weapon, and you're keeping that offensive line intact and giving him depth that he might be growing with post 2024. So I think that the Colts have made the right moves. I just think that it didn't work out last season because he got hurt. I think that he's staying on par, just like the recovery. I would dare say he's staying on par with the mental aspect of it too. I think you're dealing with a really strong kid here. This is a guy that he's built for this. I think that he's a natural leader, but he's going to have his lumps and he's going to make mistakes like anybody else who's still learning. And, I kind of feel like we don't have to say it as much, Andrew, as we did last year, but just temper expectations kind of a little bit again. Not as much last season. This is still a guy that is 21, 22, and he only played 4 games, 17 games, by the way, everyone, from college to the pros as far as starting at quarterback.
Well, yeah, and I mean, people forget this too, just how brilliant of a mind Anthony Richardson has.
Smart guy.
I'm not saying that lightly or to try to gas him up, but you guys, if you haven't, go way back, just search Anthony Richardson rookie files, because I did a deep dive on this dude's past and coming up to just learn his story, last season, almost 2,000 words. So just, get your coffee, take a
It's
seat
so worth
and
it,
read
though.
through that. I can't wait to do rookie files this year with Latu, AD Mitchell, already fantastic stories. Those are going to be must reads this summer. But you go back and Anthony Richardson was, he was in accelerated classes. He was in, advanced classes pretty much his entire, grade school, middle school, high school. Anthony Richardson was a very gifted kid, and there were talks of him even transferring and going to a magnet program school because of how well and how much he was excelling in school. So not only does this kid get good grades, we've already seen how good he is in the community, but he retains it. He doesn't you rarely see Anthony Richardson going out on a football field and making the same mistake twice. He just needs that experience. He just needs playing time, those live reps. And I think that's obviously what you hope he's going to get all season long, barring health. And then those more live reps he gets, you're just going to see the better Anthony Richardson will be throughout the season. So that's kind of a good segue into, what do the Colts have planned for Anthony Richardson in 2024? So Drake, I'm gonna pass this on to you first here, because I'm interested to hear what you have to say. But when you look at, the Colts offense last year versus, what all the Colts could do with a healthy Anthony Richardson, having Jonathan Taylor beside him really full time for the first time, how do you see this Colts offense being structured? And specifically, how do you think the Colts are going to use Anthony Richardson next season, from the jump, from week 1 all the way to week 18? Do you think it progresses, or do you think that the Colts are going to come out week 1 and be ready to go with their entire offense because Anthony Richardson now has a full year in the system?
So that's a really good question because of that. It's really because of that injury. But here's the thing, man. I believe in Shane Steichen's ability to develop guys, and a lot of the quarterback position. Don't get me wrong; it's physical, okay. But we've seen physical or physically, gifted freaks in the NFL at quarterback at times just not pan out. Guys that can throw it a mile, guys that can run. Sometimes it just doesn't pan out. It's more about the mental, and I think that Steichen has kept Richardson in the loop. So I really do think that, man, I'm gonna go with the higher expectations, and it's because of this. With Gardner Minshew almost the whole damn year, that team, while they did fall to teams like the Falcons, which that was such an embarrassing loss, I like to forget about that game, but they almost made the playoffs. They were one throw away from making the playoffs with Gardner Minshew. Okay. Think about how far that team goes if Richardson doesn't even see the sideline. I mean, it's really interesting to think about because some of those games you're like, man, if you had a dynamic guy, imagine how much Richardson opens that offense against the Falcons without Michael Pittman Jr. Oh, I bet you that guys that aren't supposed to get open, I bet Josh Downs has like 8 or 9 catches just because the defense has to account for his legs. So I think right out of the gate, man, they're going to wheel this dude out ready to fire. I think that you need to because it's probably going to be a divisional game. I know the schedule hasn't been released, but it's usually now right at the start, right at the end. They do that to some teams, and like the Colts, they front loaded a lot of their divisional games. I think it was either last year or the year before. So I think that you need Anthony Richardson to be as prepared as possible, and I think that he has been right in the loop, rehabbing everything. As soon as he's a full go, ready to go 100%, I just don't think it's going to be really anything where you look at him and go, he's been missing beats, man. I think he's just going to hit the ground running.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to NFL Nerd to listen to the Latu coach interview for Rookie Files. Yeah, I've heard that interview, and it's just fascinating stuff. So you'll definitely get some of that in my Latu Rookie Files piece that when that series starts and continues later this summer. But yeah, Drake, I think the Colts, they're gonna Anthony Richardson is going to be prepared. I think Shane Steichen is going to have this offense prepared. I think they're going to be very calculated in how they use Anthony Richardson. So because one of the and this kind of gets to the point that a lot of people have been wondering or kind of asking, will the Colts you dialed things back in the quarterback run game because they saw because of Anthony Richardson's injury last year, and his ability kept getting hurt on those scrambles. Honestly, I don't think so. I really don't think they're going to dial things back, and here's why. One of the main reasons you drafted Anthony Richardson was because of his ability as a runner, his dual threat ability. And if you try to hamstring that, you're taking away one of the reasons he's so dynamic and one of the main reasons you took him in the first place at number 4 overall. You don't want to hamstring him like that. So now there are ways that you could be smarter about it. And that's, Anthony Richardson learning to protect himself better, going down, not necessarily fighting for that extra yard all the time, learning when to go down and live to fight another day, finishing runs out through the end zone and going out of bounds instead of slowing up like he did against the Houston Texans, which caused the concussion where he missed the Baltimore game. There's different things that he can do. And the Colts can also protect him as well. In not using the quarterback run as much. Maybe instead of 7 to 8 scrambles a game, you cut it back to 6 or 7 or 5 or 6. I think Jonathan Taylor, simply his presence in the backfield, is going to help that a lot too, because you're going to face a lot of different looks. Teams are going to, have to pick their poison in a sense. Do you take that quarterback run away, which I think some teams definitely will, and then Jonathan Taylor will get the ball more? Do you take Jonathan Taylor away, or try to at least? Then the quarterback run will be more open and you won't have as much attention on Anthony Richardson. So those hits might not be, coming as quickly or as forcefully. So I really do think things are going to open up. I don't think they're going to limit him as far as in the quarterback run game as much as people think. If I do, I think it's going to be very minimal. But I do think that this team is going to be a run first team. I really do. So for the people out there that think that Richard's going to throw for 5,000 yards and over 40 touchdowns, I don't know if that, I don't even know if that'll ever be Anthony Richardson, because this team is going to be a run first team. And why wouldn't you? When you have Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, you're going to look to establish the run like that. But I also don't think that they're only going to throw 10 times a game either. I think it's going to look, you're going to see a good, probably they're a run first team. I would expect maybe a 55-45 split pass to run. I still think you have to pass to score and run to win. So you can expect those Michael Pittman Jr. production to continue. You can expect the Josh Downs production to increase. And then the explosiveness of this offense. Anthony Richardson himself is going to up the explosiveness of this offense just simply because, he's an explosive runner of the football. You're going to see him get those 10, 15-yard runs and further more often than certainly more often than Gardner Minshew was able to provide. And then again, in the deep passing game, this is where you can start with that run, bring the defense in so they're not just sitting in a too high shell the entire game, because if you're just going to sit in a too high shell the entire game, okay, the Colts, Shane Steichen has no problem letting Jonathan Taylor completely take over a game. And if they have to hand it off to Jonathan Taylor 30 times in a game because the opposing team just sits in a too high shell and Taylor runs for 210 yards and 4 touchdowns, the Colts win, fine. That's perfectly fine with everybody. But when you have that running ability of a running quarterback, of a former all-pro running back that, as if he's healthy, can, as we saw at the end of last season, still has that all-pro form in him. You put that all together, you bring that too high shell down, you get maybe more one-on-ones on the outside. This is where the shots to Alec Pierce come in, the shots to A.D. Mitchell come in, even Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman has talked about wanting to, be get more involved in the deep passing game, and I think he can. We saw that 2021 with Carson Wentz. We saw it last year how he can go up and get jump balls. He's always been that type of player. So it's just having Anthony Richardson in this offense opens things up. So we're not going to see this vanilla quick passing game constantly that we saw out of Gardner Minshew. We're going to see a more explosive offense simply by having Anthony Richardson in there. You're going to see different types of concepts, different types of plays, more deep shots. You can really think about how the Philadelphia Eagles used their offense when Jalen Hurts was having his MVP caliber season. That's the type of offense that I think you're going to see with the Colts next year, and it's going to be all driven on what is the defense, what is each defense trying to stop. The Colts are, with the ability of Anthony Richardson and his dual threat, they can do the exact opposite and just continue to counter that all the way down the field. And I think it's going to be a really successful method to go about, especially when you have someone like Shane Steichen and his ability to game plan. It's going to be the ultimate chess match. And that's why I think this Colts offense, people are sleeping on it a little bit, because it can just be so dynamic and you have so many different options you can go with.
Yeah, and when you look at the build of the offense, you're talking about a guy that has all of the abilities to account for of Anthony Richardson. That's the first thing, and that's terrifying to deal with. Even if you have a subpar kind of average receiving core, now you've got Jonathan Taylor, who is a home run hitter and a really devastating running back. He's a top 3 running back, top 5 running back at the worst in the NFL. Then you're talking about every phase of the passing game. You've got the deep threat with Pierce. You've got I would say the intermediate threat with A.D. Mitchell, because he's such a good route runner. He's going to catch a lot of that intermediate stuff. And then you've got the short slot guy with Josh Downs. And you've got the all-around guy with Michael Pittman, who, like you said, go back to the Carson Wentz days. Go look at some of that film, people, even last year against Baltimore. Pittman is every bit of a 50-50 ball guy, okay? I mean, he is a physical, nasty receiver. He loves using his body to just deal damage on defenders. So he's more than happy to go up there and physically rip down a ball. But then you have to factor in the tight end room. There's a lot of weapons to work with there, and that's without even talking about Jelani Woods' potential. So it goes down a lot, though, if it's Joe Flacco. Okay, when you're talking about Richardson as opposed to Flacco / Minshew, worlds apart. Okay, especially year 2 Richardson, now that he's been able to digest an NFL playbook for over a year, and he's been able to just talk to Shane Steichen, be in his pocket. After you've seen what he did with Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, all those guys, it just makes you so pumped to see what he's going to do with Anthony Richardson in year 2. And I think they're going to roll him out there ready to fire away, dude.
And at least if Joe Flacco does have to come in and play this season, you're not completely hamstrung by his ability to not throw the deep
Oh,
ball.
that dude's got top 10 arm strength.
Joe Flacco can still sling the pill all over the football field. So let's do way too early predictions. Why not? We're sitting here, it's May 9th. We're still, at least 3-4 months away from actual football now. 4. So let's do some way too early predictions. In chat, I want you to put your way too early predictions. Give us a stat line for Anthony Richardson, what you're expecting of him in 2024, passing and rushing. So Drake, you kick us off, buddy. What are your way too early predictions for Anthony Richardson in 2024? What do you think a realistic stat line for the QB1 looks like?
Now that I look at it, it might be a little bit too much in one area, but I still think it's achievable. And that's 17 games, of course, but 272 out of 441 completions. So that's 61%. Okay. For 3,745 passing yards, 25 passing touchdowns, 11 interceptions, but 144 rushes. That's about 7.98 a game. For 843 rushing yards, 5.9 per rush, for 9 rushing touchdowns and 6 fumbles, but he'll have 34 all-purpose scores.
34. Okay. Honestly, Drake, that's not that far away from what I was going to do. Now,
nice.
So I think we're on the same wavelength here. I don't have the actual. I didn't go in as far as detail as you, and credit to you, buddy. I don't have the completion and attempts numbers, but I am going to say I think 61% completion percentage. I think that's a good number. I think around 61%. I think that's a realistic number for Anthony Richardson to hit in year 2. I am going to go go with 3,800 passing yards, 3,850. I'll go 3,850 passing yards. I'm going to go about 27 passing touchdowns, and I'm going to go 13. I'm going to go 13 interceptions. So 27 and 13. Now, as far as the rushing numbers are concerned, I'm not going to go as far as like 800 yards, but I'm going to go just below that. I'm probably going to go about 740 rushing yards. I am going to go a little bit higher on the touchdowns, though. I'm going to go with 10. I'm going to go with 10 rushing scores. So that would put him at 37 all-purpose touchdowns.
It's a hell of a year, dude.
That would be, and that's of course playing all 17 games, but I think that's realistic, man. I really do, and I might be a little bit high on the passing touchdowns. I realize that, but you know, when you have this kind of offense that the Colts do have, and if you have Richardson for all, you know, all 17 games, I think the Colts can really do some damage. I really do. So let's take a look at what some other people are saying here. NFL Nerd saying 12 rushing touchdowns.
Hey, those goal line situations, that man's 6'5", like 250.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see, because Jonathan Taylor could certainly take touchdowns away from Richardson, but Richardson could also take some touchdowns away from Jonathan Taylor.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they use how Shane Steichen uses Anthony Richardson in that red zone package. DSG Goodbar, 3,900 passing yards, 850 yards rushing, 30 touchdowns, 22 passing, 8 rushing, 10 interceptions. That's 20. But maybe that's more realistic. You know, 23 to 24 passing touchdowns. For me, I'm still at that 10 interceptions, so around the 34 all-purpose touchdowns, like you, Drake. I think that's a really solid number. Stats, Matt, hard to have a stat of the day. So here's my prediction: 61% completion, like us, 3,800 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 97 rushes for 635 rushing yards with 9 touchdowns and 5 fumbles. So 35 all-purpose touchdowns there. It's that NFL Nerd, 1 rushing touchdown to over 50 yards. Not out of the question. Not out of the question. So DSG Goodbar saying, you know, Jonathan Taylor could also have a lot of scores too. So yeah, you know, I think we're all in the same wavelength there. That 30 all-purpose touchdowns, whether it is, you know, higher passing, lower rushing, or lower passing, a little bit higher rushing, not out of the question. You know, I think at least 30 all-purpose touchdowns is very realistic for Anthony Richardson. You know, whether he goes up to above 35 or at to 235 or more, I think then you're talking about MVP caliber type season, kind of what Jalen Hurts had a couple of seasons ago. But I think Anthony Richardson has that type of potential in this offense. And obviously, health permitting, that's the biggest thing. He's just got to stay healthy. And if he does stay healthy, I think Steichen and the Colts can put him in these situations to succeed. Because like you mentioned, Drake, you said that Steichen is really good for his development. Steichen is just the biggest thing for Steichen is not necessarily developing Richardson, but just putting him in the right situations for him to go out there and use his athletic ability as a runner, use his passing talent and his talent as a passer to make those plays. And again, this is one of the best supporting casts that the Colts have really had in a long time. You put it with such an athletic quarterback, you're doing exactly what you need to do. You're putting the weapons and the pieces around him for him to go and succeed.
Yeah, and you know, when you talk about the supporting cast, I was like, all right, yeah, it's been a while, like 5 or 6 years, and I think you got to think eras. You know, I mean, Phillip Rivers didn't really have this. Wentz didn't have this. Ryan didn't have this. Last year they didn't have A.D. Mitchell. They didn't really have a potentially completely fully healthy Jonathan Taylor. And Luxure's didn't have anything like this. So it's truly been a long time since you can say they've got playmakers at tight end and one hell of a group. They've got playmakers in multiple receiver spots. They've got one of the best backs in the league. You've got one of the most deadly and threatening quarterbacks in the league and one of the most dynamic play callers in the league. It's been a long time since Indianapolis has been able to say that about their entire roster in one given season. So I think that when it's all said and done, it's all going to come back to the health for Anthony Richardson. Okay. You can't do a damn thing if you're not on the field. I know that's really lame to say, but it's also very true. And there was nothing worse than seeing him in his sunglasses and that freaking arm sling looking sad. I'm like, God, man, I just want that guy to be on the field. You love the Minshew, right? But it's all about Anthony Richardson, people. They're continuing to add weapons, continue to look in free agency. Maybe they grab, a bargain wide receiver, keep on pushing that core, keep on pushing A.D. Mitchell, Alec Pierce, because I do think that Pittman and Downs are at the top of that depth chart. But at the end of the day, man, everything looks good so far. There's no reason to be negative, to feel, oh gosh, what's going to happen? Is he okay? The Colts feel he's okay. Richardson looks great. Jelani Woods even looks good, man. The people who were hurt are starting to make comebacks here, and Indianapolis's roster is actually starting to take that 2023 form it should have.
And as I always say all the time, DSG Goodbar says it, best
I
ability
love it.
is availability. So we'll have to see who stays available, and hopefully Anthony Richardson can stay healthy for all 17 games. So as we wrap up the AR talk tonight, here's your stat of the day from Stats Matt. Anthony Richardson was averaging 1.75 touchdowns a game, all-purpose touchdowns, and 1 turnover combined per game. So again, if that holds, let's round that up to 2 all-purpose touchdowns a game. That equals, in a 17-game season, 34 all-purpose touchdowns and 17 turnovers combined between interceptions and fumbles. So that 2-to-1 touchdown to turnover ratio that it usually is very crucial for quarterbacks to hit in the NFL. So I think it's safe to say high expectations, but realistic expectations for Anthony Richardson in 2024. So let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors, Drake, because we actually have quite a bit of news and rumors to talk about. So the schedule. The NFL schedule will be released next week. May 15th will be when the schedule releases. So I think that is next Wednesday, if I remember correctly. Yep. So hey, maybe we'll have a Wednesday episode breaking down the schedule. We'll have to see about that. But I mean, no other sport, really, it's so funny, no other sport has a day where everybody looks forward to the schedule release. So but it's always fun to see, how many primetime games will the Colts have? How many will there be home primetime games? Will we get an Anthony Richardson versus CJ Stroud primetime game? What's the late season schedule as the Colts are potentially in a playoff fight. So it's always interesting to see how it gets laid out and who the Colts are playing in their biggest games of the season.
Yeah, and you really don't want your divisional games to be front loaded. That's probably the biggest thing that you just are like, man, really hope it doesn't happen, because if for any reason you have a slow start to the season, you're already kind of behind. But other than that, I always think it's really entertaining just because they've changed how they put those divisional games. I think they put one at the start and one at the end, man. They make you basically not able to sit your starters. And it's really, I love the way the NFL has laid out the schedule. So I'm pumped for it. And I think that the Colts are walking into a very, maybe even a little bit overlooked just how competitive it could be AFC South in 2024.
Look, if the schedule makers have the Houston Texans going up against the Indianapolis Colts in week 18, I think that means that the NFL is expecting a Texans Colts battle for the division all the way to the end, like we saw a year ago. So Zaire Franklin making some news as well. Drake, you wrote a piece on this for horseshoehuddle.com. I encourage everyone to go check it out. But Zaire Franklin made an appearance on Chris Long's podcast, the Green Light Podcast, and had some interesting comments, and I think a lot of them are being blown out of the water, but he talked about, the Texans being the main rival to the Indianapolis Colts instead of the Titans. That got some Titans fans all riled up, but it's true. I mean, that the Colts really haven't had they've had some issues with Derrick Henry, but outside of that, and Derrick Henry's no longer there. So Colts beat the Titans twice last season, and it came down to the Houston Texans. Now, Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud. I know Will Levis is over there, but I don't think Will Levis is on the same tier as those guys. So just interesting to hear his comments about that. And then Drake, he had some stuff to say about CJ Stroud as well.
Yeah, and I mean that was I mean, for example, he was talking about like what it was like to do because he has his own show, The Trenches, of course, fantastic.
Right.
So I highly suggest people go subscribe to him and EJ Speed's show. He said it was the worst one he'd done, after they lost to the Texans. So CJ Stroud was in the mind of Zaire Franklin after they lost that game. And I think that it really just means the whole Tennessee Titans thing. I think, first off, he said no when they were asked, Tennessee's probably your biggest rival. He goes, quote, no, because I already smacked them a couple times. It really be Houston. So it's like it was just funny for him to say that. But that's that good old fashioned divisional rivalry we're talking about. But right now, based off of last year, you have to go with last year. The Jaguars choked. Okay, and Tennessee are the ones that kept the Jaguars out of the playoffs. So it's like right now it looks like Indianapolis, when fully healthy, could compete with Houston, So those are the front runners of the division right now. And until proven otherwise, that's just how it has to be seen. But yeah, man, if I was Zaire Franklin, I would not forget about CJ Stroud for a long time. And I would absolutely be hoping the schedule makers make that a week 1 matchup.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, CJ Stroud has been going off, and he has the right to, because they won the division. They're the tops
Oh,
in the AFC South,
yeah.
so he has the right to talk his talk. But he was talking about how he, put it to the Colts for both times, last season. And it's and you when you look, Zaire Franklin pointed, well, look, the Colts were up by quite a bit, and they were pretty much in cover 2 shell for at least for over half the game. And that's when CJ Stroud really started to get things going in that first game. That first game when Anthony Richardson got the Colts out to a 14-0 lead in a span of 5 minutes, if that. And that's when Anthony Richardson was going. And then CJ Stroud said they cooked the Colts in the second game. And in the second game, CJ Stroud did go off. To the Colts, the Texans did win. But a better throw by Gardner Minshew, and CJ Stroud will be 0-2 against the Indianapolis Colts despite that. And Zaire Franklin did have to bring up, he's like, you still never beat Anthony Richardson. So I like this. I like this rivalry, especially when you have two really young, really good quarterbacks, because like I said, I mean, all praise to shout out to CJ Stroud. He's a fantastic young quarterback, immensely talented, and potential to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. In his, maybe even as early as next season. So this is good. This is good for the Colts. It's good for the Texans. It's good for the AFC South to have, and just the NFL in general, especially if Anthony Richardson hits his sky high potential to have 2 really good, really young quarterbacks in the same division duking it out for years to come. So I'm all for it. Friendly trash talk in the offseason. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and then they'll settle it on the field this fall, which is going to be exciting.
Yeah, and you play your divisional opponents more than anybody in the regular season. So why not make it more exciting by talking some crap, man? I absolutely love it. And again, I think that the entire AFC South, even the Titans and Jags, man, don't forget about them. I think this is a division that's on the up and up, and it just seems like these teams just keep adding more and more talent, more and more fire to all 4.
It's no longer a laughing stock.
No.
That is for sure. And then finally, everyone likes to talk about the when players, the new numbers. What's the draft class going to look like? Well, we do have some number leaks that have come out over the past couple of days. But let's start out here with a non-rookie, Drake. Dallas Flowers changing from 33 to 21. So I know he was really excited about this. 21 is a really a badass number for a cornerback, in my opinion. Maybe it's just the little edge he needs for Dallas Flowers to secure a starting spot at cornerback, because Jalen Jones, my brother, number 40 at the cornerback position, terrible look. Change that. Maybe change it to 33 now that that's available. Number 40 at the cornerback position is just bad, Drake. It really is.
Yeah, it's ugly. But look, man, I love Dallas Flowers. I thought that in the 4 games he played, he looked really good. I am pumped to see what he's going to do this season.
Exactly. Now let's look at some of the rookies. Okay, we got some rookie numbers, and these are always subject to change, because there's some other guys that have they have numbers currently because they were practice squad guys last season. So if those guys are cut, the guys that are going to make the team, like the obvious ones like Leatu Latu, Matt Gonzalez, AD Mitchell, those guys could still change their numbers to something different before the regular season starts. So just keep that in mind as we announce these. But from getting these off of players posting them on Instagram, various videos on X or Instagram, Leatu Latu is number 97, one less than the Colts great Robert Mathis at 98. Matt Gonzalez was 71. Shout out to Ryan Deem, the former right tackle of the Indianapolis Colts, who is on the Super Bowl winning team in Super Bowl 41. He was 71. Tanner Bortolini is now, this one I think the Colts accidentally leaked because they have a picture up of Jack Anderson, but they put under it 61 Tanner Bortolini on that. So a little bit of a mistake, but they may have leaked that number 61 is Tanner Bortolini. Jalen Simpson, I saw that he put out there on X that he is going to be wearing 30. And then Jonah Laulu as that interior defensive tackle, number 57. So out of these numbers that have, for the rookies, Drake, that have been released or been leaked, which one of these do you like the best? Which one do you think fits the best?
I just really like Matt Gonsalves at 71, man. I think that really fits. I think eventually you're going to see him start on the offensive line. Like you said, Ryan Deem, I mean, while he had false starts out the ass, Ryan Deem was a stalwart of a left tackle. So why not give it to Matt Gonsalves? I think it looks good. Also, Leatu Latu, I love the fact that he's got 97. That's like more, it just seems like more of a big DeForest Buckner kind of defensive end. Dude's already like 6'4", 260, so I think it fits.
I like 97. 97 just is a pass rushing number. You already have 90, 99 in DeForest Buckner. You have 98 in Robert Mathis. Go to 97, become the next great defensive lineman for the Indianapolis Colts. I like it. 15 wouldn't have been bad. Joe Flacco's got 15. We'll see if that eventually does change, but it seems like Leatu Latu is set on number 97. And honestly, it's not a bad number choice. But as the other numbers come out, since rookie minicamp is this weekend, the rookies have arrived there in Indianapolis. They're getting all of their equipment and everything, all the fits today. I don't know if they're practicing tomorrow for sure, but they'll be on the field throughout the weekend, and we'll get our first look at the Indianapolis Colts rookies, which will be exciting. But who's not a rookie anymore? That's Anthony Richardson, Drake, and it's really, we're still, again, like I said, 4 months away from actual football. Training camp doesn't come till the end of July, but with mandatory mini camp, that'll be our first real look at Anthony Richardson since last fall. And boy, am I excited to see the progress that he's made, hear from him, to see, what he's been doing this offseason, and just to see number 5 back as quarterback 1 for the Indianapolis Colts again.
Yeah, it was a moment that people were waiting years to hear, is that the Colts were selecting a new quarterback. So when he went down, it was tragic. So to see him throwing the ball, recovering quickly, and on schedule, music to everybody's ears. And you can just continue to hope to watch this guy be ready for week 1. And you know what? Let's go. Anthony Richardson's got a lot of expectations. Even though he's young, there's a lot riding on this guy's shoulders.
Exactly. So that's our show for today, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in to talk about Anthony Richardson and the Indianapolis Colts this evening. Want to give a shout out to Truett and my beautiful wife Danielle for the super chats, and for everybody else that joined us tonight to talk about Colts football. If you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, or for special breaking news episodes, so you never miss us. And if you can't catch us live, we're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to us, or wherever you listen to podcasts, I should say, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and you can check out our Horseshoe Huddle halftime episodes, which are our audio only episodes. So you subscribe, get access to all of those as well. Drake, I know you've been writing away on horseshoehuddle.com as always, and if you guys haven't noticed, we have a new look on horseshoehuddle.com as well. So some changes have been on there. The site looks fantastic. But Drake, tell the people what articles that you've got out there that they need to go give a look.
So, as Andrew mentioned earlier, I covered the Green Light podcast with Chris Long and Zaire Franklin's interview. So go check that out, see what he had to say about the division and just like the upcoming season. And then I will have a piece on a certain Colts rookie defender that has some pretty favorable odds to win the AP Defensive Rookie of the Year award. So go check those out.
Yeah, definitely go give those pieces a look. For myself, I had a piece out on Micah Abraham and how, he may be undersized, but he's not going to shy away from anything. That kid's got some dog in him. So make sure to check out that article. And then Jonah Laulu, I had put a piece out today about how his mother's work ethic really was instilled in him from a young age, watching her work two jobs, and how that helped push him to get to the NFL. So make sure you check that out, as well as all the other fantastic writings on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Monday night to talk more Colts football with you all. Maybe I'll be here, maybe I won't. We'll have to see. We might have a baby on the way this weekend. So if not, thank you all so much for all the support and all the blessings that you've given throughout this whole process. My wife has been a champ. She's ready to have our baby. We're ready to meet our little guy. And if I'm not here on Monday, I know Drake and our special guest, our fill-in host, are going to carry on just fine. And I'll be here in the chat to support you guys as well. So until then, everyone, enjoy your weekend. Everyone stay safe. We'll be seeing you right back here on Monday to talk more Colts football with all of you. See you then.